So let's talk about how location stuff works. So this is a little example, and you have it in your PDF. Basically, it's a little location-based thing, and it says, you know, where am I? It's trying to figure out the location. Now, if I run this on a physical phone, it's going to look different than if I run it on the emulator, and that is because the emulator doesn't really support location very well. It's got something called mockup location. So let me rerun this on a physical phone, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to DDMS so that way I can show you what it says. Well, as a matter of fact, I'm not going to get you much information because I'm also indoor on the on this, so it's not going to get GPS coordinates, and it doesn't have a SIM card. But let's do this instead. So what I can do to the emulator is I can fake the location. So there are certain emulator controls that we can do here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send see how there's a bottom, there's like a way to send longitude and latitude to the emulator, right? Doesn't exist on a physical phone, that doesn't work. But on the emulator you can do that. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, notice that there's no little GPS here, right? Doesn't exist. Now if I go here and click send, notice that now GPS is on, and notice that it knows my location details, right? Which basically is the same as this, right? Got it? So I faked it. It's as if we got a lock, we didn't. Okay, so far so good. So let me show you this example, how it works, and then what we're going to do is we're going to plug it into our code as well. So so in this code, what I did is we have something called the LocationManager. LocationManager is one of the system services that works. There are a lot of system services, and they all sort of we use them in a similar way, right? Location Manager, Wi-Fi Manager, Telephony Manager, Sensor Manager, all these managers, they're kind of similar in a way you use them. So here's certain similarities and certain differences. One similarity is how we need to get get system service. So the way you get access to it is by asking for that particular system service from the current context. So
does this have to be an activity or any of those interfaces, or it doesn't matter?
So good question. So where does this hang off of? So this belongs to a context. So as long as you have context, you can say context dot get system service. So in other words, it's readily available to any of the main building blocks. So basically anywhere in an Android app. So you get a location manager, okay? So this line of code is going to be identical regardless if we're doing sensors, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, telephony, you name it, okay? You just ask for a system service. Okay. Now, there are certain things that are specific to a specific system service, such as location manager. I can ask for get last known location. Like it's because it takes a while to get like a fix. So location manager happens to remember its last fix or not in our case, right? So far so good. Now, these are services, meaning they are there to serve us. They change all the time. So what I mean by that is that let's think about this for a second. Back to the picture that we've been going back to a zillion times so far, which is, you guessed it, lifecycle. So I am now. I want to know location, but location is something that changes, just like sensors change all the time, just like Wi-Fi changes all the time, just telephony changes all the time, just like Bluetooth changes all the time, etc. So, when do I want to know changes in location? And let's just assume that knowing changes is expensive. And it's expensive because you gotta do something to process them, right? For GPS, it's the mere fact that you're turning on the GPS chip means you're sucking dry the battery, okay? Same for Wi-Fi. For sensors, it's not the chip itself, but it's the processing of the data that is expensive. So typically, you want to register and unregister from those changes. It's very similar to what we did in our timeline activity. So again, you get to cast your net. You can cast it very small or very wide. So in this case, in most cases, I like to only listen to stuff while I'm in user's face. In other words, I can do something with that information, right? In other words, does it make sense for me to try to acquire GPS signal while the user has turned off, put the phone in the pocket? It doesn't, right? It will just waste the battery, right? Like my phone here is still trying to get a GPS, right? Trying, never gonna succeed, right? We're indoor. So, in other words, we again wanna register on the Zoom and unregister in on pause. Now, it doesn't mean that it's gonna be on resume on pause, but mindfully pick your point A, point B. In other words, pick how wide. Maybe you wanna do it on start and on stop. Maybe you want to do it on create and on destroy. It's up to you, right? But I usually do it in running state. So in this particular example, back to the code. So what I do here is on resume, I request location updates, and on pause, I do the opposite of that. I remove those updates. Okay. So in on resume, request, in on pause, remove updates. Got it?
Well, in our case, for the Twitter application, right? So you would only need this when you're in the status activity.
Yes.
Right? When you're about to compose it. So the minute that you press send,
yeah,
that's when you can request it.
Well, so if I request it only when you press send, then and have to wait until it may take a minute, 2 minutes, or on my stupid Galaxy phone, 5 minutes plus to acquire GPS, right? So you probably don't want to do that. That's why.
Well, that's a good point. But you're not really blocking anything. You're sending it to right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. So you're not blocking because this is working again on a publish subscribe mechanism, right? So in this case, I'm registering a listener. So this is a listener. Okay, it's pretty common. So what this means is that I'm saying location manager, I request that you call this guy when there's a change to GPS provider that is more than 1 second and 10 meters, I think. This is milliseconds and number of meters, right? So you get to kind of hint how frequently you would like to get changes, right? Maybe your app is a restaurant app, so you don't care if it's changed more than a block. Maybe it's a video game, some game app, and you actually care about like tiny little changes in location. Who knows, right? But you get to hint to the system. But the point is, you register for updates, you unregister for updates. Now, the actual language may be different. For sensors, we call it something else, but it's the same idea. You somewhere subscribe, you somewhere unsubscribe. You say, I want to know, you say, I don't want to know, right? And then you need to provide a listener. So in listener is going to be another class, and again, it could be an inner class, it could be a whole separate class. In this case, what I did is I made this also implement the listener, which means it's capable of being notified, which means that it must provide the following methods. On location changed, on provider disabled, on provider enabled, on status changed. It doesn't matter what those methods are, each service is going to have its own set of methods. Got it? Okay, so let me show you another example, and we'll get back to this example and actually implement it in our Twitter example. Okay. So what I'm going to show you is, do I say a sensor demo? Sensor demo. Let me show you a little sensor demo. I'm going to run it on my emulator, on my my physical phone. So this is a little app that shows me my sensors, and specifically I'm listening to orientation sensor. Okay, so I'm X, Y, and Z coordinate, right? So my x is azimuth is basically north-south, right? So if I find 0 or close to 0 or close to 360, so somewhere, so hold on. I wish this was more accurate, but it's sort of saying that north is somewhere there. Is that right? Just say yes.
Yeah, this side is not.
Okay, so it's approximately that way.
West.
Okay, so that's what it's telling me, because that number is close to 0 or 360, right? That's north. Now pitch is going to be this number. So when it's up like this, then it's close to minus 90, right? If I hang it like this, then it should be close to plus 90, right? That's pitch, right? And roll is going to be this axis, right? So right now it's whatever, 90, and then it goes the other way and all that, right? Now I changed the orientation, but that's a different story. You guys get the idea, right? So let's compare the code. And again, what I'm trying to show you here is that they're extremely similar. So sensor demo, bam. So get the sensor manager. Does this line look similar to this line, right? So bam, we get a location manager. You just do get system service, bam. And they're all these system services, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, telephony, they all look the same, right? So once you get sensor manager, guess what? You're gonna register listener in on resume and non-register in on pause, most likely, right? So in other words, I want to be processing the computing the data when I'm visible. Does it make sense to update like the screen when you're not visible? It doesn't. You're basically doing work when you're not visible. In other words, remember how I said stopped doesn't mean that you're not doing much. Most likely you don't want to be doing much, but there are apps that actually keep on processing even when they're in the background. In other words, they're in this cache state, but they're still cranking, doing stuff. That's not a good app, right? Usually, generally speaking. So far, so good. So on resume, we register, on pause, we unregister, and I provide a listener. So again, this is a listener. It implements sensor listener. This is an outdated. There's a new API for that, but don't worry about that. And what that means is that it's gonna call us on accuracy change and on sensor change. So I do nothing here. I ignore it. But when it's on sensor change, I figure out the results because they're given to me, and then I do something. Got it? So all of these guys work pretty similar. Any questions on that? That was a yes or no question. Yes or no? No. All right. So let's our Yamba app, because it's so simple. Let me show you what we would do. So bam, bam. So let's assume that we want to specify our location. Okay. So what I'm going to do is, and you can only do that in status activity, right? So I'm going to define location manager. Location manager is going to be so organize imports.
So one quick question: this location manager only gives this location and coordinates, right? Not really like, or does it have the option in this API like city or state, country?
So location manager gives you a location as in location object. So location manager. So it gives you a location as a location manager, as a location object. And location itself can, let's see, location itself can tell you distance to accuracy, latitude, longitude, time, speed, provider, etc. Right, some basic stuff. But location is very, it's very abstract kind of concept, right? Now, if you want to convert it to a, 123 Main Street, Springfield, Illinois, right? Then you need to geocode it. So there's a whole other API for that called Geocoder that tries to convert it to a known address, right? And as a matter of fact, in my
So that is plugged into some known library or something?
yeah, and that is open source. Geocoder is open source. So in my where am I application, it actually does try to do that, right? So I take the location. I don't know if you noticed, but
That's a cloud application, right? I'm assuming, or it's local.
yeah. So I think I
No,
took
it's
that
probably
out.
that library that you
Oh, just that. Okay, that's good.
See on location change. See here it is. So I use geocoder get from location. So I pass the latitude longitude to geocoder, and I ask for known addresses.
So where did Geocoder come from? When you go up
Geocoder is part of the API, so it's here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's geocoder. Now there's a
So there is a Geocoder updated like the latest maps that they have, and
But don't confuse it with Maps. Maps is now a whole other ballgame. Maps is a Google-specific proprietary secret product that you need to sign a contract to use. It's not Android thing. So Google Maps is a Google proprietary product. You need to go sign up for Map API key, get a key, download the API, separate API to use it. Okay, because they have to pay for the tiles, the copyright on the tiles. So that is actually a proprietary product.
No, but from latitude longitude, you said it will figure out an address. The
Yes.
Geocoder can do that.
Yes,
So that's
so-
the library that plugs into what?
Oh, so that is open source. So that will query. I'm not sure exactly where it's
So
querying.
that should have a map application too, right? If it's going to map back.
It's not mapping. It's just
Well, no, it's giving you back. So you give it 37, comma minus 125, whatever, and it gives you back 123 Main Street. Now, if you want to draw that on a canvas with like trees and like buildings, then that is the map. So there's a yeah.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
what is the typical size of this geocoder? I'm assuming it should have a lot of data, right? To figure it out or something.
I don't know where the data is coming from per
Or
se.
does it get from
So
online?
it's a
in the
library that
background?
you import in Android.
Geocoder is part of API, so it's
already
there. Yes, Geocoder is right here. It's Android location geocoder. Yeah. So it's reverse geocoding is process transformation latitude blah 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 the amount of data series and so on.
So which means it should have a address database somewhere to do the translation somewhere, right? Online.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. So
And that's doing it locally too.
yeah.
Wow. So that's integrated already in the API.
Yeah.
But
So-
the location doesn't rely on the GPS, or it can rely on the Wi-Fi.
So location is abstract. So let's do that. So let me show you that since we're doing that example here. So in status activity, you have a location manager. Now I'm gonna get location manager by saying location stuff. So I'm gonna say location manager is location manager, and I simply say get system service and then you find location service, right? So far it's just a location manager. I just got something that's available to me anyhow. Now, if I want to find the last known location, right? I would basically say, let me do something like this, location, right? I would say something like this, location is location manager dot, and let's see, get last known location. See, this is where it's asking for a provider. It's saying what provider do you want to use to get that result, and you can have multiple providers. So I would say I can say GPS provider, which is a good location manager dot GPS provider. Well, let's see. This GPS provider is a known one, network provider is another one, and so on. Right? So you could have different providers. Galileo in Europe, whatever Russian one is called. China's coming up with something. So there could be different providers other than the GPS, which is US run, right? So I specify the provider.
Also, what you're saying is if I give this GPS provider, it may not work in Europe or China.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying there are different systems on the planet. Now, one of them is global positioning system run by the U.S. government. It's available to all of us across the entire planet, but it is run by a U.S.
Oh,
government.
really? Okay. I didn't know that.
Yes, yeah, they launched all those 27 satellites or something like that, right? Now, Chinese government has their own. Europeans have been working on Galileo forever, and it's like over budget, over time kind of project, right? Typical European project. So
The Russians, their satellite blew up over the weekend.
yeah, exactly. So everyone's got their own different provider. I worked with a company that's making like super precise positioning system for inside the malls, right?
Inside
Tot-
of a mall?
Hmm?
Inside of a mall?
Inside of a mall, yeah. So like you want to know in front of what store you're at, and like, yeah, you can because you can't find your people inside the mall right now, right?
There are some apps that are already there which could, like if you're inside the mall, they could lead you through the mall to go to a specific store and all, right? What locations would they use then? GPS already supports
Pretty Wi-Fi depends.
Well, no, I don't know what they're using, but yeah, I don't know exactly what they're using.
So if you are in the inside of the building, the GPS is working inside of the building.
Typically not.
Yeah, so that's why I asked the question. So how can we know about the applications? Will we use a network or we have a generic chip?
So there could be different chips inside of your phone that differently figure out location. One system is that you go to a network. You ask your cell phone tower, "Hey, since I'm talking to your tower, what's my location?" The other system is your chip goes and triangulates satellites. There could be another system. It goes triangulates. I don't know the little coffee shops or benches in front of the stores, or trees now have RFIDs, or I don't know. There could be
Based on
different.
the IP address assignment to guess where you are.
Yeah. I mean, I
There's
don't
also
know.
Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi,
triangulation.
exactly.
It knows exactly, by how many Wi-Fi's
Yeah.
are around you, and also the cell phone towers.
Yeah. So Google's been scanning the Wi-Fi networks.
That is for that only, right?
Huh?
They
More
street
information
view cars,
is-
it will go and scan the Wi-Fi hotspots and
Yeah, they've been-
they'll make it that if they don't.
Yeah, they're basically driving down the street with a car with no GPS, and it scans and says, look, Bobby, Wi-Fi network Bobby and Tommy are located at such and such, so it basically builds a mapping table between the GPS coordinates and the scan results. So later on, if I'm in that area and look, I found Bobby network, we can map it with Google service to a specific GPS coordinate. So that's the idea.
Wi-Fi invasion cars.
Exactly. Yeah, and then you get a lawsuit from the German government. So, but that's or at least investigation. So that's what's happening there. But anyway, back to this. I'm asking for a last known location, right? So, so that's one thing that I wanted to add. But I may not know this last known location, right? And so what I want to do is I also want to register LocationManager for updates. So LocationManager dot well, actually I don't want to do it here, but what I'm going to do it is like we said in on right. So I'm gonna do this source override implement methods. I'm doing this quickly just in the interest of time. So we're looking for on pause, right there, and on resume. Those are typically the ones that you care about. Resume, bam. Add them. Why did we add it here? So I'm gonna yank them out of here. This is the button stuff. So right there, I'll say location stuff. Location stuff, and I'm gonna flip the order because it doesn't make sense like this. So add it here. So on resume, we're going to do location manager dot request location updates. Okay, so it says provider. This one, provider, minimum time, minimum distance, and listener. Provider. I already defined it as a string. Minimum time. How often do we want to change our stuff? Let's just say we don't care that often, every 10 seconds or something. Or we can use the same delay that we use but we don't have the delay here. It doesn't matter.
1 minute or something, right? To
Yeah, I can. Yeah, 60,000. Sure, minute. Minimum distance. You know, doesn't make sense to, let's say, every kilometer, right? We care about that, right? Every 0.6 miles, right? Something like that. And then listener, I'll say this. Okay. Now it says you can't have this be a listener because it's not a listener, so we do that little dance and say let it implement a listener, and then I say add unimplemented methods. Remember? Just like we did on click, whenever you made something a listener, blah blah. Yes? Okay. Huh? So location, you undo the thing, so you remove updates for the listener, this, and we're done, okay? So this is going to register an unregistered listening. Now when there is a new something something, we need to do something, right? So on status changed, so hold on status changed, on provider, on location changed. I'm only going to care about on location changed, right? Got it? And so what I'm gonna do in case location changed, I'm gonna update our location, right? So what is gonna be, so our location is gonna be yamba.get Twitter, and then I think it's set. How do you set it in Twitter? Anybody?
Second one.
Location. How do you tell Twitter what
Source, I think it was source.
No, it's not source. Something else.
I mean the URL, the server or whatever.
So let's go to the J Twitter documentation. Look for JDoc, right? Java doc there, and then Twitter, and then location. Okay, not this one. Set my location. There you go. And you need to pass it an array of ignore G-enable for users. Okay, this is default setting for okay, so we need to say latitude, longitude, lat long as a double, okay? So set. Yeah, it's right here, but why is it not finding it? Huh. Add cast to Yamba get Twitter. With Twitter. But why is it not working? Maybe my version of the library doesn't have my location. What's the problem? Why am I not seeing that in my Twitter? Hold on, let's see. Dot set favorite count, blah blah blah. Set search location, that exists. Let me see what else is there in the documentation. So it could be that something changed in the documentation. Set my location, set search location, search user, set search location. Well, I'm not sure why it's not supported. But you guys get the idea, right? How that would work, right? That's what I was gonna enable, right? So, anyway, I'm gonna undo it now. It's a bummer that the library doesn't support it. I already fixed the library. I actually have a different version of a library than it's available online, so we could with the emulator. We could because we could simulate it. Let me remove this. And almost done, gone. Location manager gone, bam. Okay, so that's the location stuff. So is that kind of making sense how that works? So you guys have two, like where am I is a good example, it's in the book. And so is the sensor. And I have this other example which sort of goes into how to use some of the custom components as well, but it's basically just like sensor demo, is just that it's showing you that graphically, so it looks like this. So basically just as I move, it basically updates the rows, the compass rows, right? So you can kind of see how it shows you where north is and so on, right, on a physical device. So far so good? Okay, so that's basically sensors and location.